Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
We're so pleased to have on an award-winning drummer, percussionist. He's innovated some new drum software. He's also an educator in Boston. Jonathan Ulman, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
You know what? It's fun, going over all the materials, Jonathan. It's so great to have you in town, actually in studio with us. Let's talk about this Beats in a Box, where whisper breaks, Beats in a Box, that you and your brother innovated.
Yeah, and so I worked with my brother and my producer, the archetype. It was kind of birthed out of necessity. What we're finding when we're looking for beats or drum samples is this industry is all about perfection. So a lot of the sounds are very clean, perfect sounding. They've all been mic'd up in beautiful studios, and you get the perfect drum sounds, which is great for pop music or whatever you're doing. And so we didn't want that. We wanted lo-fi, crunchy, one mic, old school setup, and sounds that you don't, find anywhere else, because we're making songs, for artists that don't want the clean sound. So we couldn't find them, and it takes a long time to make them, using the computer software. So what we found was, let's create those sounds and make a beat pack.
You guys are going old school, and also, I got to ask you this, because I think our viewers are going to want to know, is when you're recording the tracks, does Blueberry have a different sound in the box than, let's say, Count Chocula?
Yeah, it depends on how many marshmallows.
That's what I was thinking, because with the sound, I know as a kid,
flakes are different.
Because you remember when you're a kid and you're shaking it, going, "I got to get to this toy prize."
Yeah.
And so, but you guys are using those sounds,
cereal
and what I would say,
boxes,
non-conventional percussion sounds.
Very, very non-conventional. I mean, my brother is a found object sculptor, so I would go to his house and get chains and rusty saw blades and trash can tops, things that you wouldn't find, but that you can't, the computer doesn't quite mimic those sounds. You need to physically have them. So, so I would pick that stuff up, and then in the process, I was also taking broken cymbals and repurposing them with my brother and coming up with sounds that are,
which I think is awesome. You and I were
unique.
talking too, because I mean, you're endorsed by Zildjian, and and also with Ludwig drums. But what a great way to repurpose, because I've played with a few drummers, and let's say hypothetically they damage or break cymbals. Yeah, you're not just throwing them away.
No, very, very much using them giving them a second life, and something that may not sound great. Like some of the cymbals I couldn't bring on stage and play live with them because they don't translate well. But in the studio, they have this trash sound that's very cool. And Zildjian, while they can't, market them because they don't exist they're not a product for them. They're very much like, this is very cool. We like seeing that our cymbals are getting a different life. And I think that's how innovation starts. I mean, a lot of the sounds they got with their cymbals that are in the market came from trial and error, R&D. So this is me kind of being playful with metal,
I think it's so much fun. I've got to ask you too, for you and your brother working, on the Beats in a Box, what are some of the craziest things that you use to make sound with? Besides the blueberries.
Yeah, besides the blueberries. I think I remember one time when I was in the studio with my producer, and I just brought a tote of rusty metal, and I'm kind of going through, not sort of realizing that there are rusty saw blades in here, and I kept, I would pull things out and things would start falling on the floor, and I'm like, I'm going to start using gloves when I'm taking these out.
When you're making sounds, do you have to have a tetanus shot before?
Yeah, I definitely did.
Especially when you have, you were in the whisper room and you had to be like lowered in. It was almost like you're doing Cirque du Soleil and creating drum sounds.
I mean, that was another part. So this was all created in a whisper room, which I believe they're in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so it's made for a person to do vocal tracks. So I have a small Ludwig Breaks Beats kit, and it's the only kit that would fit in that room. And so I would put it in. I would go in, I'd sit in my seat, and my producer would bring the drums and stack me in, and then he would set up one mic and he would shut the door. So when we were done, and granted it's hot as all heck in there. And when I was done, he'd have to remove all of the drums so that I could get back out. But that was sort of the vibe. It captures something in an ISO room that's very, very, it's got a very short, quick sound. I mean, there's not a lot of space for the sound to travel.
No.
So it's
close, and it's
close.
It's actually deadened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's what worked for this trashy material that we're using.
And then you also have a lot of artists that you're collaborating with that are using your sounds on their albums and projects.
Yeah, because they didn't want that clean sound. And my producer was finding that he'd have to go in and use the computer to kind of create some sort of metal or lo-fi sound or use filters, and he was like, this takes too much time. Let's just make the sounds that we want.
And it's not organic.
It's yeah.
You know, it reminds me of what you're doing is kind of like the old Disney guys back in the day, to where they had to go in and make the sound effects to go with the cartoons and the movies. And you guys are doing that now, and it's being integrated into new albums and music. So a lot of the artists you're working with have new albums releasing this year. I
remember we have one artist who actually we made a beat using this pack, and he's going to be putting it out later this year. And I remember just for fun, we filmed what we're doing and we created some sounds. And I remember him messaging me. He was like, "I want that. That's my like." And he called the producer. He's like, "That's mine. I'm already claiming that." So I feel like that's the cool part about being creative, is trying things and being new. I mean, the amount of times I've been in the studio where they're like, "Well, your kick drum sounds too clean. Can you instead bang this table, on the ground, and we're gonna mic that because that's the sound that works." And I feel like that's the part that's cool about being a studio musician is at the end of the day, people are like, "Oh, how did you get that cool sound?" It's like, well, it was me playing on my lap and they mic'd my lap. It was me using a rusty saw blade, and I think that's what makes the tracks unique. There's a story to tell behind
I think
the
it's so much
music.
fun because if you remember right, even like back when ZZ Top did their one album and they were using the car doors and the trunks and everything, and then you hear that as the percussion.
Yeah. I mean, it sometimes you just can't. The sound has to be in some sort of environment or natural state. It can't be something that just came out of a factory.
Well, and I got to brag on you, Jonathan, too, because as a top session musician in Boston, to where 6 years running, you got the award.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
I
mean, you are an award-winning session drummer and percussionist. And what suggestions do you have, for musicians, that like yourself, that are trying to make a living out of this and still chasing other passions?
Sure. I think it's a very competitive industry. I mean, especially in Nashville, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people doing what I do. So how do you set yourself apart? How do you identify what makes you unique? And I feel like the DIY movement right now is really important because it gives us an opportunity to be our own biggest fan. Like, kind of take a step back and be like, what makes me different than this person over here, or this person doing?
And you're great on social media too.
No, I appreciate that.
You got a huge following.
And so a lot of people post videos of them playing drums, and that's great. There are a lot of drummers that can play drums. How do you take that a little bit further and go outside the box? And kind of like this Breakbeats pack, it's called In the Box. It's thinking outside the box. It's coming up with something that does exist, but doing it in a different way. And it's actually funny is, I think sustainability in a career like this comes from being on the forefront of people's minds at all times. So I think you do need to stay innovative. You need to know that people are like, what is Jonathan going to be up to next? And I think whether or not I get the gig or there is a gig to get, as long as I'm in the conversation, I think that's where careers will continually progress. And I think another thing that I tell drummers who want to create a career is you got to set goals for yourself. I think by setting goals for yourself, it's sort of a personal quest to reach something or go after something. So that process allows you to stay focused and hungry towards achieving something. And in the meantime, and not that they connect, but other people are sort of watching you, go towards something. Whereas if you don't have a goal and you're just kind of doing and hoping somebody's going to come to you and be like, hey, here's this great opportunity, it doesn't work like that.
No.
You need to go after your own opportunities.
Exactly.
And then other people will keep an eye on that. And I think that's the case. So I will set goals. I have a list in my wallet that I made when I was 12 years old about the goals that I wanted to accomplish as a musician. And they're pretty funny because my 12-year-old goals are nothing like my 42-year-old goals. But there were little boxes by each of them. And every time I checked off did something, I check off the box, I make 3 more.
Yeah.
So my list has evolved and grown and kind of correlated to where I am in life.
And doing very well. And I got to bring up too, on it, Jonathan, to where you beat cancer.
I did.
Back in your 20s. And now, at Berklee, you're mentoring over 600 students.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, not only are you in-demand session musician, you're creating these great, beats in a box, with your brother and innovating sounds, and you're mentoring others in music.
I think I got to the point now where I want to prepare, the next generation. And I think the generation that I come from, is a little bit different than my parents' generation.
Right.
And then this generation is just slightly different. I feel like the generation now, the ones that are in college, they want immediate gratification. They're like, well, my 2-year goal is to play with the biggest artists. And I was like, that's my 30-year goal, So I feel like, working with them and say, hey, listen, you can't put a timeline on this, because if you do and you don't hit it,
right,
then what are you going to do? You're going to give up after that? It's like, what happens if you set a 2-year timeline, it didn't happen, but it was going to happen at 2 years in a week, but you've already given up. So I feel like those goals, you set them and you go after them,
right,
or you set 5 goals, and whichever one gets checked off first, you focus in that area.
Yeah.
So I think talking to them, because when I'm talking to them, they're just about to go off into the world. They're about to run off to LA, or they're going to run to Nashville, or, and I think that's great. But they have to understand that this is a very disappointing field.
It's very competitive, and like you and I were talking before we came in studio, even, and music, I think, is one of those great things that unites us. Especially musicians and artists and visual artists. But it's like, do it because of your passion.
Oh, absolutely.
Do it because you love it.
Yeah.
Because you can't not do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the joy really comes from. And then I think good things happen.
Yeah.
As long as you approach things that way.
And you can't be so focused on, I only want to play in front of 80,000 people every night. That can be one of the things that you focus on, but it can't be the only thing. And I think what keeps music exciting is there's lots of different avenues that you can take or follow paths. I got my master's degree in photography.
Right.
And I take pictures of drum sets.
Yeah, but how awesome is that?
But because
you're merging things that you love.
And I like taking pictures of drum sets. And actually, I get more visibility because of my photographs, because now I'm hitting an audience that appreciates good photography, and I get to shoot drums. How many different pictures of drums can you say? Well, I find different ways of being creative with drums being sort of the focus.
Right. It's like on guitars. You can never have enough pictures of guitars.
Well, that's true.
Just
And I think the same thing about. I think the same thing with drums. But when the studio sessions are slow or the live gigs are slow, I'm going to go do something else with music. When those come back, I'll take a break from the photography. It's like put as many fishing poles in the water. When something starts to get nibbles, okay, my focus is going to go over here. And I think that's why I've been doing this for 35 years. I still love it. I still like it each day more, because it's like, what am I going to do today? What's going to be fun and exciting? And this beat packs that I did with my producer has been, something that we're really excited about.
Well, and also you and I were talking too, Jonathan, it's got to be fun to be able to do this in coordination with your brother also. And you were telling me that, he designed a nice little guitar that was in Mad Max.
Yeah, Mad Max Fury Road. So.
Oh my gosh. Because that's, of course, being a music nut and music gear nut, that's like one of the greatest scenes when the guy's on the bungee on the back of the truck, and he's got that incredible guitar. And your brother designed that?
They flew him out he's a sculptor, and they flew him out to Australia for 2 months, and they had him work on various things in the movie. So the movie had kind of already been done at that point, but now they wanted, what else can we do? What kind of other things can we do? And he came up with this idea of a flame-throwing guitar. And the funny thing is, the bass is a bedpan, a bedpan, and it's got all these other, found objects. And because
it's very steampunk feel.
Very steampunk. And he actually put a Zildjian cymbal that he cut up and put as like the pick guard would be. It's not. It doesn't say Zildjian in the movie, because they softened it and did all these things. But every one that he's made, because after the movie, people are like, can you make me a Mad Max guitar and commission it? He always puts a Zildjian cymbal in there, which is pretty cool.
But it's playable artwork.
It's playable artwork.
And making a segue to that too, I think definitely, with your beats in a box also, Jonathan, to me, it seems like not only for music that's, on all the digital streams and all that, but also great for movies and TV.
Absolutely.
To have those organic sounds in there.
Yeah, I think I came down to Nashville. I was talking a lot about AI and how are humans even going to be necessary for music? And I do. It's scary to see what the technology can do, but also it's like art, music, photography, any type of creative environment. It really relies on that imperfection of a human, you know. And when I'm in the studio, my producer, I'll go in and he'll be like, all right, we're gonna record to this, and he'll play me the track. It's done. He's already created the beats and the music and everything, and I'll be like, what do you need me for? He goes, well, I need you because you're not perfect. Yeah. And so that imperfection allows the song to have life, to evoke some sort of emotion, because the computer can't figure that out yet. It just makes it perfect. He's like, I need you to unperfect what I've already created. And I'll play, even if I play the same beat that's already on the song, you can feel dynamic because I don't hit the hi-hat the same way each time. I don't hit the snare each time. So I don't fear that my job is going to be lost. And I probably won't work with producers who don't need me because they're like, I can do this on a laptop. I'm going to work with people who still value, the creative process, still value human imperfection, still value the emotion that a human, puts forward when they're writing a song.
But let's talk about that too, Jonathan, where you think about it, some of our favorite music, from the past and even now as people are coming back home to it, they were imperfect, whether it be the blues, whether it be, traditional country music, jazz. I like the imperfections. Yeah. I don't mind a doinker note in there once in a while, or the rhythm's a little bit off, or if it speeds up a little bit. That's human. And I think you have those kind of emotions, and that's something that I don't think computers can replicate. Just the right hit on a drum, just the right, catch of a cymbal. It's like some of those things, you have to have people in them.
I mean, how come we could appreciate the Rolling Stones making all those clams in their records, or the Beatles, doing mishits? Why did we appreciate that then? But now, if the song is imperfect, we're just like, no, this isn't good enough. That's a weird sort of trajectory of where the industry wants to go. But I don't think it'll get there. I think, just like with AI, the technology is being used the way that you think. It's like, well, I'm never going to get to be on a track with Jay-Z, so I'm going to take his voice and put it on a track. Okay, that's cool, but we know that you did not play on a track with Jay-Z. So, so I think what's going to happen is we'll find a balance. We'll find a way to collaborate with it, and it's still going to involve the humans being creative and maybe just using the technology for efficiency purposes.
Sure, and I think that's what you've continued to do also, Jonathan, is innovate and create. Whether it be in your teaching, whether it be in creation of beats in a box, or in your session, or it's just the students, everything you're doing, and your photography, you're still creating, and you're making sound, audible and visual magic. Yeah, and that's a rush.
Yeah. Well, in all honesty, it's great because you do put it out on social media for people to see, but it's mainly for me because I still want to do that. It's still enjoyable to be creative. Nobody sees it, I'm still going to have fun doing it. And I think that's what my parents taught me and my brother taught me. They go into the studio and they make art. And it stays in the studio. They don't have social media. They do it because they enjoy doing it. And I think that's why it's always been fun for me 35 years later. It's never been a job.
And the thing is too, with keeping it in the family, it's like you can do the photography for the package, you can play it, you can demo it, you can do it all. You're like a one-man band.
I try to be.
Well, I want to make sure for our viewers, Jonathan, for to be able to get the beats in a box, because you're going to have that available this summer and everything, so that people can purchase that in places. And also, I know you're doing lessons and everything. You've got like multiple things going for session work. If somebody needs to hire you for sessions, where do people need to go for all things Jonathan Ulman?
I do have a website, so jonathanulman.com, and that's probably where you'll be able to find the beat pack on there. Also, AR Classic is my producer's website. You'll be able to get it there. My social medias are JMU Drums, so Jonathan Matthew Ulman is my name. So JMU Drums on all platforms. Even if you have questions or want to ask me something specific, I love that the world has gotten a lot smaller and that people can actually get in touch, and I'm always there to answer questions. So I would say social media, JMU Drums, JonathanUlman.com. AR Classic is where you will find the beat pack, and then my brother's name is Michael Ulman. If you want to see the flame-throwing guitar,
which we all do.
Absolutely.
Obviously, and I can't wait to get my hands on Beats in a Box and use it for some of the stuff that I do. Just because and just the visuals, you're going to have to do like a whole little documentary on just you creating the sounds.
And on my Instagram, you can see the video of me and my brother working on different cymbals. It's pretty cool. And of course, we're going to send you the box.
It's so awesome what you're doing.
Yeah,
just
thank
incredible.
you.
And be sure, get Beats in a Box, incredible stuff for, organic sounds, but also follow Jonathan and his brother. Keep up with him. Hopefully we'll get him back to Nashville more often, not just staying up in Boston and winning awards and playing sessions.
Yeah, I want to come down here and do that.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, my friend.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.